The Patriots have some incredible opportunities heading into day 2 of the 2024 NFL Draft. We'll explore those here on PatsCast. Welcome to PatsCast. I'm Brad Whitaker, second podcast of the day. Go check out the pod from earlier where we broke down the Drake May selection at 3rd overall, but now's the time where things start to get really interesting, and it's been an interesting draft so far, right? I mean, nobody expected Michael Penix to go at 8th overall to the Atlanta Falcons of all team after signing Kirk Cousins to 4 years, $100 million. I don't know what they were thinking there, but that was one of the interesting stories. Guys like Xavier Worthy getting drafted ahead of A.D. Mitchell from Texas. Mitchell still on the board heading into the second round. A lot going on as we head into the second round of the draft, and the interesting thing is the Patriots' choice at 34th overall, which is now the second pick in the second round, is never been more valuable, right? I mean, right now the Patriots have an opportunity, if they want to deal that pick, to bring in a real veteran player that could be an incredible difference maker, and we'll see what they end up doing there. But right now, we know the two positions in need, right? The Patriots addressed the quarterback with the 3rd selection of Drake May. They still need to find that outside, big-bodied wide receiver, and they need a left tackle. And the problem is, you're probably not going to get both of those, right? You're probably at least not going to get an elite-level player in the 3rd round. You're going to be able to select one of them early in the second round, but heading into the 3rd round, it's going to be slim pickings, particularly at the tackle spot. So there's a lot of interesting names still on the board as we head into day 2 of the NFL Draft. And the Patriots have some options, and I'm also going to explore some potential trade opportunities that they could take advantage of. Because again, that pick right now, as we're heading into day 2, when you look at this draft board and you look at the type of players available, has never been more valuable. And the Patriots, if they're willing to deal that pick, could get a lot in return, whether it is a veteran wide receiver or if they want to trade back and stockpile a couple second-round picks and address both positions, that's an opportunity as well. But let's explore both of these positions right now, players that are still available. At wide receiver, a guy who we all thought was going to go somewhere around like 20 to 25 range, still on the board, A.D. Mitchell, 6'4", 200-pound wide receiver out of Texas. There's some red flags there, right, with his thin frame. I hear he gives up on plays from time to time, but you watch him run routes, turn on a dime, play on the outside. He's a guy that could really make a difference for the New England Patriots, and I'm shocked he's still on the board, and I'm shocked Xavier Worthy, his Texas teammate, was drafted ahead of him, although Worthy had the fastest, I believe, 40 time in the draft this year. So certainly that boosted him up the board and got him ahead of his Texas teammate, A.D. Mitchell. Ladd McConkey out of Georgia, 6 foot, 186 pounds, but plays a lot bigger than that. And that's the thing. He's kind of an outside guy, kind of a slot guy. You can play him wherever. Patriots need an outside guy. They have a plethora of slot receivers. McConkey, I feel like, is a better fit in that slot role, but you watch him play at Georgia, like, you could really put him anywhere. A.D. Mitchell or Ladd McConkey is going to be available, one of those guys for the Patriots, if they indeed want to take a receiver with the second pick in the second round. Keon Coleman, Florida State. He's a big-bodied guy, 6'3", 213 pounds. You also have Jalen Polk out of Washington, the number 2 to Rome Odunze there. A little smaller, 6'1", 203 pounds. Roman Wilson, I wouldn't expect the Patriots to draft him unless for some reason he slips to the 3rd round. He's out of Michigan, a little smaller, 6 foot, 192, but certainly J.J. McCarthy did a lot with him. His only real weapon. I think he had a pretty good tight end, but Roman Wilson was his number 1 receiver there. There's also Troy Franklin out of Oregon, another big guy, 6'3", skinny frame though, 187 pounds, but he'll be available if the Patriots really like Franklin. And a guy who I think is a bit underrated at this point because he plays for Western Kentucky. Not a lot of people know about him. He's also very undersized, although he is larger. He's 210 pounds. That said, he's just short of 6 feet at 5'11". Is a guy by the name Malachi Corley. And if you haven't heard about this guy, go watch his clips on YouTube. He is probably the best yards after catch prospect I've ever seen. And that used to be the bread and butter of the Patriots offense, right? They had receivers who maybe weren't always the best in separation, maybe weren't always the best downfield, but Brady had guys that he could dink and dunk it to for 5 to 10 yards, and then they could run off for another 15, 20 by breaking tackles and clearing an open field. Malachi Corley is that guy. One of the best yards after catch guys I've ever seen. Go watch his clips. Maybe he slips to the third round, but that's a guy out of Western Kentucky I'd keep an eye on. But if you're looking for an outside, big-bodied boundary threat, yeah, he could play on the outside for sure. But he's not very big-bodied, even though he is very physical and can break tackles, but good yards after catch guy. But here's the issue, right? A lot of these guys, a lot of these receivers, some perhaps that I just mentioned, there's a lot of other great receivers that will also be available that I have not mentioned, but some of these guys will slip to the third round. So it may be more important for the Patriots to prioritize the tackle position, and there were a lot of tackles taken in the first round. I was like, is Tyler Guyton going to slip? No, he was drafted. A lot of guys, Jordan Morgan, a guy who many thought would go in the second round, ended up going to Green Bay ahead of Tyler Guyton. So there's not going to be a lot of choices there if the Patriots don't select a tackle in the second round. Maybe you can get the kid from Yale. I forgot his name, but he's more of a developmental guy, probably not a guy who's going to start right away, going to have to learn under Okorafor. But there are 4 guys here that if the Patriots do opt for a left tackle, that I think could start right away and would leapfrog Okorafor pretty easily. That starts with Patrick Paul out of Houston. Big guy, 315 pounds, 6'7", plays left tackle. Kingsley Suamataia, please correct me if I'm mispronouncing his last name, out of BYU. We know BYU has turned out a lot of really good players, really good offensive linemen over the years. 6'6", even larger in terms of weight, 324 pounds. Another left tackle, college left tackle. You know, a lot of the issue here is a lot of these teams are drafting, and we saw this in the first round, they're drafting right tackle guys, and then they're going to convert them to the left side. There's 3 really good left tackles that are still on the board that played on the left side in college. So Patrick Paul, Kingsley Suamataia, and then there's Brandon Coleman, a little smaller, 6'4", 315 pounds out of TCU, also a starting left tackle. All 3 of those guys at the Patriots draft. Drake May has his left tackle of the future. I don't know. I mean, it's really hard because there's a lot of really good wide receivers, right? And we know the Patriots have struggled so much finding that boundary outside number 1 X wide receiver for like a decade now. They haven't been able to find that guy, and there's lots of guys on the board available right now who may not be available in the third round, but they're still going to be pretty good starting caliber, at least on the Patriots offense, wide receivers that are available in the third round. I don't think you're getting that at the tackle position. There's also Roger Rosengarten. He's actually a right tackle for for Washington. We know how great Washington's offensive line was this year. Really made life easy for Michael Penix. 6'6", 300 pounds. But again, you're going to have to move him to the left side if you want to take him. So not sure I'm as comfortable with him, even though we know how good that Washington offensive line is. And certainly there's a connection there, especially with Brian Belichick now at Washington, even though he didn't coach him. And he's on the defensive side, right? But you want a starting left tackle, you got to take him the second overall pick in the second round, and you really have 3 choices: Patrick Paul, Kingsley Suamataia, and Brandon Coleman. And then at that point, you're really reaching for developmental guys in the 3rd or 4th or 5th round. So it's going to be a tough decision for Elliott Wolf because, again, I think you can get some good wide receivers in the 3rd round, but you're not going to be able to get A.D. Mitchell. Ladd McConkey will probably be off the board. Keon Coleman, Jalen Polk. Maybe Roman Wilson is available. Not sure he's a great fit. Troy Franklin, Malachi Corley. Maybe those guys are available in the 3rd round. I told you how much I like Corley, but he's undersized, right? Even though he's an incredible yards after catch guy. So you're going to probably have a hole at one of those positions heading into next season, in all likelihood. And you're going to have to address one of them in the 2nd round with pick number 2. Now, the Patriots could, considering how valuable that pick is heading into day 2, seeing all these great players on the board, there's a lot of really good defensive players available too. I mean, it was a record-setting draft year in terms of offensive players taken. I think it was like 21, 22 offensive players taken. Hardly any defensive players off the board. I think the first one came in the middle of the 1st round. Like, pretty incredible. So teams are going to want to trade up into the early portion of the 2nd round, whether it is to select one of these pretty decent wide receivers or tackles that are available, or the plethora of defensive players that are currently available. So the Patriots could have an opportunity here. I don't know. I got to look at the draft board to see how many teams have like multiple picks in the second round. That makes it easier. But maybe you involve the third team, or the Patriots trade back, trade up again. A lot of different things that they could do. But if they have an opportunity to somehow get 2 second-round picks by trading back, then yeah, maybe you're not going to get A.D. Mitchell or Patrick Paul or the kid from BYU, but you can get a Keon Coleman and a Brandon Coleman and a dress wide receiver and tackle, and then you're off and running, right? You don't have those holes heading into the 2023 season. So some tough decisions here for Elliott Wolf. I'm sure he's going to be up all night fielding calls. Teams are going to be talking about trading up. Now, I will say I believe the Buffalo Bills, they traded back to the 32nd pick and then traded back again to the 33rd pick with Carolina, who had the first pick in the second round. We know they need a receiver after getting rid of Stephon Diggs. In all likelihood, one of these top wide receivers will be off the board. I'm just guessing. I think there's a high probability of that. And that guy's probably A.D. Mitchell, right? After losing Stephon Diggs, I feel like A.D. Mitchell fits like a glove in that offense. So, in all likelihood, he's not going to be available. I'm just guessing, right? Maybe they go for a McConkey, a bit undersized, but a guy who can play on the outside, play in the slot, really can kind of fill that Stephon Diggs role pretty well. But really tough decisions right now by Elliott Wolf to have to make here. But what is very interesting now is that we talked about this on the podcast a couple of days ago. We know the San Francisco 49ers are at least exploring the potential of dealing their star wide receiver, Brandon Aiyuk. And we know I don't think he's very happy with his situation in San Francisco right now. I'm also hearing rumors that the Niners, and this came from Michael Silver on X, that the Niners are more likely to deal Deebo Samuel instead of Brandon Aiyuk. I mean, I'd take either. You're getting two big physical guys. I mean, I think Brandon Aiyuk might be better on the outside. Deebo's maybe not as big of a deep threat, but he's also more versatile in what you can do with him. So, but either way, if the Patriots could somehow trade that pick, second round, for a guy like Brandon Aiyuk or Deebo Samuel, maybe they're going to have to throw a fourth rounder in there or a future draft pick in the third or fourth round. But that is an opportunity, right? And then you're not taking a risk on one of these receivers that could potentially be a boom or bust, like an A.D. Mitchell. I think Ladd McConkey's going to be pretty good. I think Keon Coleman's going to be pretty good. I like Malachi Corley, but you know what you're getting if you make a trade for Deebo Samuel or Brandon Aiyuk. So they got an opportunity here, and I'm sure either the Niners are calling the Patriots or Elliott Wolf is calling the Niners, and they're at least having those conversations right now. And if Patriots could bring in a Deebo Samuel, a Brandon Aiyuk, I talked about this a couple days ago, it really elevates KJ Osborne. It elevates Kendrick Bourne. It elevates Demario Douglas. It elevates the tight ends. Austin Hooper, who was added this offseason. It elevates Hunter Henry. But then, of course, you don't have a left tackle. You have a core four who kind of a fill-in at this point, a bridge guy. And you're probably developing a guy that you have to draft in the third or fourth round, and you may not even have that pick because you're going to have to deal that away to bring in a guy like Deebo Samuel or Brandon Aiyuk. So, some tough decisions here. If I had to guess, I'd still think the Pats will stand pat and then take a Ladd McConkey or probably a bigger body guy like a Keon Coleman or a Troy Franklin. Or maybe they prioritize the tackle position. Again, I think the Bills are going to take a receiver, so they can take Patrick Paul, and then they got a 6'7", 300-plus pound left tackle out there starting week one. And then you got some depth there with a core four. You got a Wenu on the right side. Hopefully Cole Strange is healthy. And now suddenly you short up that offensive line. Makes life a lot easier for Jacoby Brissett or Drake May or, Lord forbid, Bailey Zappi, whoever's that quarterback there when the season starts. So this is where it gets interesting. And look, we all expected the Drake May pick at third overall. It was fun to play around with the J.J. McCarthy ideas. It was fun to talk about Jaden Daniels not going to Washington because he didn't like playing Topgolf. But they got Drake May. He's going to take some time, right? We're going to have to be patient. But you make life a lot easier for him if you draft a left tackle. But you also make life a lot easier, too, if you get an outside boundary threat. You have an opportunity to bring in Brandon Aiyuk or Deebo Samuel And let's also consider T. Higgins asking for a trade. A.J. Brown, doesn't sound like the Eagles are going to trade him, but hey, worth a phone call, right? He's the best case scenario. So a lot going on there for the Patriots. It's been a fun round one of the draft. I didn't plan on it, but I actually watched the whole first round on the Pat McAfee show because Bill Belichick was there. That was really interesting. I also got some insight, I think, into what Belichick would have done had he continued to stay with the Patriots. And he had a lot of amazing things to say about J.J. McCarthy. And did say some nice things about Drake May, but you can see the clips floating around on X. For the most part, 80%, 90% of what he said was just ripping him apart. So I think if Belichick were still here, he probably would have traded back, probably not to 11. Maybe he would have traded back with the Giants or something and then taken McCarthy and stockpile some assets. We've all explored that scenario. But Belichick's gone, right? So we got Drake May. We know the sloppy footwork. Belichick pointed it out. We know the poor decision-making at times, not seeing the field as well as he should, but there's things you can clean up there with Drake May. We all know the traits. We all know the athleticism. We all know the size, the arm strength. It's going to be fun to see what the Patriots do with him. Don't expect him to start week 1. In fact, don't even expect him to start at all this season. It's going to take some time, but who knows? Maybe he shows up to training camp and turns out to be the best quarterback, and then we're off and running. But the success of the Patriots, I think, hinges as much on day 2 and what they do with that second pick in the second round and what they do in the third round. And if they trade for an Aiyuk or a Samuel, or they take a tackle first and defer receiver to later, or if they take one of these big name receivers, A.D. Mitchell's still on the board if he doesn't go to the Bills, and then you're dealing with a tough tackle situation. You can't have it all, right? You got the quarterback, you got the tackle, perhaps, or you got the receiver. As Meatloaf said, 2 out of 3 ain't bad, right? So they're going to have to get 2 out of 3 here, and whether that's bringing in a veteran receiver via trade or getting one of the top receivers or shoring up that offensive line. I mean, right now, I think the way I would rank it, I'd probably say trading for Aiyuk or Deebo Samuel, number 1. If they can do it, pull the trigger, deal with the tackle position next year, and hopefully Okorafor works out this year. That's my number 1 scenario. Second scenario is shore up the offensive line. Take Patrick Paul, take Sua Mattia, take Coleman, take one of those left tackles. If you love the guy, just take it. Don't have to worry about it. Don't have to worry about the offensive line much anymore. You got depth at guard. You got David Andrews coming back at center. Owenu's on the right side. Hopefully Cole Strange is healthy, but you got, like I said, you got depth at guard. So that'd be my second option. And then the third option is you take a big name receiver, like an A.D. Mitchell if he's available, Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman, Jalen Polk, Roman Wilson, Troy Franklin, or Malachi Corley. Maybe one of those guys slips to the third round. I think Corley might. But he's undersized, so I don't know. Like I said, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. You're not going to get them all this draft, but overall, going to be an interesting 24 hours or 19 hours, whatever it is now for the Patriots before they make that decision. But you know the phone calls, the phone's going to be ringing, right, for Elliott Wolf, and you know he's going to be calling the Niners, he's going to be calling the Bengals. Maybe he'll be calling the Eagles about A.J. Brown again, saying, hey, you know, there's some good receivers here. This was a scenario I explored, right? A lot of tackles coming off in the first round. There's going to be a lot of wide receivers available. Some of these teams that are willing to trade their receivers can fill that role with a cheaper contract, so then they don't have to pay a big-name guy like Aiyuk, Samuel, A.J. Brown, T. Higgins. They may be willing to trade it just for budgetary reasons and develop that guy and then get him off the books. And then the Patriots, who have all the cap space in the world, they have to fill this cap space somehow. And that's the thing. Like, the Patriots have to fill the cap space. Like, I think they need isn't it required? Like, you got to fill 90% of it? Like, they're not even close. So, I don't know. It's almost like necessary to make one of these trades right now for one of these receivers if they can pull it off. But also, we'll talk about it after the draft, I'm sure, for weeks. But, you know, people aren't expecting the Patriots to be a good team, so maybe one of those future draft picks, future second rounder, future third, is going to be considered valuable in 2025. And then they can make a deal for a T. Higgins or an Aiyuk or one of those guys after the draft, too. That's another opportunity there. And then you can address tackle in the second round. I don't know. We'll see. A lot's in the air, but like I said, this is when things get interesting. Things are going to be a lot more fun tomorrow. I think we all expected the Drake May thing to happen. He's heading to Foxborough, going to have his little meeting with Robert Kraft, and they take pictures and do all that fun stuff. But really going to be focusing on day 2 of the draft, and we'll be here to cover every pick here at PatsCast, so be sure to subscribe, and it's going to be fun. Hopefully, if the Patriots pull this off, they can go from a bottom-rung team to at least a middle-tier team if they address this right, whether it is a veteran receiver or shoring up the left tackle role. We're going to be here at PatsCast to cover it. Do not miss out.